Hey, Tech fans. Welcome into a brand new show here at Tech Sideline, a recruiting show that focuses on Virginia Tech football, men's basketball, and women's basketball recruiting. I'm Nick Brown, joined alongside lead columnist Chris Coleman. And, well, Chris, I walked into your office about a week and a half ago, and I said, man, this recruiting cycle's been really quiet for Virginia Tech. And, well, I think I jinxed us because there's been a lot of work for us at Tech Sideline as of late. And, well, the Virginia Tech recruiting class for football has doubled in size since then.
Yeah, it's that time of year where, you wrap up official visits throughout the entire month of June. And, guys are making their decisions now. So Virginia Tech has gotten a lot of commitments over the last week or so. And, with hopefully a few more coming up in the next week. I know there are some scheduled announcements coming up. So hopefully this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Well, today we'll break down the four most recent commits, and we'll start off with the flashiest and most exciting. Everybody wants to talk about the quarterback, A.J. Brand. He walks in at 6'1", weighs in at 204 pounds from Irmo High School, Columbia, South Carolina. But he's got a lot of Virginia Tech and Virginia roots.
He does. His dad was a Halifax County Hall of Famer. Down in Southside Virginia, near where I'm from, led them to a state championship. Then went to Emory and Henry, where he was a 4-year starter at quarterback on the football team there. Also played baseball for Emory and Henry. So a lot of in-state ties with A.J. Brand. His dad is named Aaron Brand Sr. Some of you might remember that name if you've got an affiliation with either the Southside Virginia or Emory and Henry. But A.J., they went 14-1 last year at Irmo High School. 72% completion percentage, almost 3,000 yards, 45 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, another 1,100 yards and 17 touchdowns on the ground. Very, very prolific quarterback in high school. Kind of raw though. He's got kind of a hitch in his throwing motion. It's kind of elongated, which I think scared off some teams. Because Virginia Tech was the only Power 5 program really to pursue him as a quarterback, is what it seems like. South Carolina was kind of like, we want you, but you're an athlete. We don't know what position you're going to play. I think he's the ideal second quarterback in this class to go along with Keldon Ryan. Ryan's a little more advanced, but didn't really wasn't all that productive until his junior year last year. So that'll be an interesting battle between those two guys, and obviously battling Davie Belfort, who's a year older. But I like the pickup. I think it's one of those guys who, he does have a high ceiling, but it's also at the same time, we know how high school quarterback recruiting is these days. If a head coach in college isn't 100% happy with his high school quarterback development, he's going to go transfer portal. Yeah. Right. So it's one of those things. You always get excited when you get a quarterback commit, but besides Hendon Hooker, who, hasn't been here for the last 4 years, Virginia Tech just doesn't start high school quarterbacks anymore. That's a trend I think needs to come to an end at some point, because you like that the transfer portal is there, but you don't want to have to rely on it every year.
State Offensive Player of the Year in Class 4A, and I wasn't familiar with South Carolina divisions in class, but that's the second highest level in South Carolina. Like you said, beat out Shane Beamer in South Carolina for him, and you touched on it briefly. The coaching staff, it seems to be a trend that they like 2 quarterbacks in a class. This is now 2 of 3 classes that they've done so.
Yeah, I guess that's a position where you can never have too many quarterbacks to a certain extent, and you're going to have attrition at that position too. I think they want to give as many guys as possible a chance to develop. So we saw the battle between Pop Watson and Dylan Whitkey, which Pop Watson won, so Whitkey transferred. So you're going to have some other battles coming up too, but that's all part of it. I like all the quarterbacks that they've taken over the last 2 years. I like Davie, and I like the 2 that are in this class. We know how it works out. Only one of them most likely will ever start for Virginia Tech. Yeah. And even then, with the portal these days, who knows? That just makes quarterback recruiting all the more interesting.
Well, the quarterback room is a room that you can never have enough talent in. And another position that really fits that description is the defensive tackle spot. And out of the 4 recruits we're going to discuss today, Christian Evans is probably the most liked by the recruiting service. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. recruiting rankings at this stage are still incomplete. Let me point out, Virginia Tech's recruiting a kid from Maryland who's named Sidney Stewart. I think he's going to go to Maryland, but I'm going to use him as an example. He's taken an official visit to 5 Power 5 programs, which means he's got at least 5 committable offers from major programs. Yet 247 still hasn't even assigned him a star ranking. That's just like, you've got to don't pay too much attention to the rankings at this stage because they're very much incomplete outside of the very, very top guys. But yes, Evans is a guy who I view highly. He's got a solid offer list. I think North Carolina was Virginia Tech's biggest competition. We had heard he almost committed on his UNC visit and decided to hold back and visit some other schools, and Virginia Tech was one of them. And the Hokies were able to secure his commitment, within 6 days of his official visit. He's strong. Sometimes he plays a little bit too high, but he can get away with that because of strength. He can just push people around. He'll have to learn to play lower at the college level, but I absolutely think all the tools are there, and he's a good fit for the Virginia Tech defensive scheme. And I think Virginia Tech has a high success rate with Northern Virginia kids. He's a Stonebridge guy. With the Wang brothers, Jaron Govea-Winslow, who's currently on the staff now. They haven't signed a ton of Stonebridge players over the years, but they've had 100% success rate over the last couple of decades there.
Ezekiel Wimbish last year as well for Virginia Tech. Christian Cheese Evans is his nickname, I guess. He's got a good smile. 6'3", 280 pounds. I thought this was really interesting. His team, Stonebridge, lost the first 4 games of the year, went 8-5. Their only other loss was to Maury High School in the state championship game. Like you said, visited Virginia Tech June 14th and committed officially online on June 20th, but we had heard that it was a little earlier, so Virginia Tech must have impressed on that visit.
A lot of times what they'll do these days is they'll commit, and then they'll make a plan with the coaching staff on when to announce the commitment, and they'll try to space them out, so they don't have like 4 guys announcing in one day. They'll space it out over the course of a week, so everybody can get a little bit of the limelight, and you can kind of keep momentum going that way, or make it seem like you have more momentum by getting commits on multiple days rather than stacking them all up on one day, which I'm good with because if you stack them up in one day, it's like you're kind of drinking from a fire hose from a publisher standpoint. Right? Yeah, or maybe from David's standpoint. He was the one doing it this past weekend. But another interesting thing about Evans is, I believe he was a second-team All-State defensive lineman, but I believe he was a first-team All-State offensive lineman.
He's mean on the offensive line.
Yeah, he's nasty. He's probably not going to be quite big enough to be like a guard probably, but I could see him, like if defensive tackle somehow didn't work out, I could see him being a center or maybe a guard. I think he's fairly similar to the Moores because they were defensive tackles in high school too, and they were actually both originally recruited to Tech as defensive tackles. Part of me still kind of wonders what Braylon would look like as a defensive tackle, but that's another conversation. But I think Evans is one of the top commits of the class so far.
His top 5 came down to Virginia Tech, Penn State, UVA, and Oklahoma. Sorry, top 4 right there. Big stuff right there. Keeping it on the defensive side of the football for Virginia Tech's third commit in the past week that we'll talk about is a guy that, he keeps the DeMatha Catholic pipeline humming along, and that's going to be Noah Chambers at 6'2", 215 pounds, a linebacker from Hyattsville, Maryland. I visited Virginia Tech on June 21st and committed that Sunday on the 23rd.
Brent Pry once sat in that chair right there and said he told Lauren Johnson he'd be crazy if he didn't take a Highland Springs player every year. Well, he's doing the same thing at DeMatha. This is the 3rd year in a row that they've signed a DeMatha player. So you got Dante Lovett, who may start at cornerback this year if they move one of the other corners to nickel or something like that. At any rate, Dante's the 3rd cornerback and going to play a lot this year, I think. Then you got Emmett Laws, who was my top player in last year's recruiting class, and now you've got Noah Chambers. He's a natural inside linebacker, good instincts, good frame. Actually, there's one play on each player's highlight reel where you see both of them. Like if you watch Noah Chambers' highlights, you see this play, and if you watch Emmett Law's highlights, you see this play. It's where Chambers comes in with a big hit, forces the fumble. Emmett Laws picks it up and does the big man run for all the way for a touchdown with the ball in like one hand, and he's kind of got it stuck out. Really entertaining play. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the more DeMatha players you can add to your program, the more Highland Springs players you can add to your program, the better your program will be.
Yeah, he's the second linebacker in this class, joining Brett Clatterbow. Virginia Tech beat out Maryland. It was what it seems for Noah Chambers, and it seemed like he kind of spurred a little bit of beef between the two coaching staffs on social media.
Well, I remember Virginia Tech stole a coach from Maryland last year, Elijah Brooks, who was Maryland's running backs coach, and before that he had been DeMatha's head coach. So it's something about Virginia Tech hiring former DeMatha head coaches recently. I think Elijah Brooks is going to work out better and longer for Virginia Tech than Mike Jones did for basketball. I think Maryland is so focused on keeping players in state.
Yeah.
And DeMatha, we talk about DeMatha being an important school for Virginia Tech. Obviously, the Maryland coaches are going to view that as a very important school for them too. And when you take one of their coaches, and the Maryland staff probably knew about Chambers because of Elijah Brooks, and he jumps to Virginia Tech, and in the end kind of takes Chambers with him. I mean, he wasn't committed to Maryland or anything before or anything like that, but that was his head recruiter for Maryland. Obviously it's going to spark a little bit of beef. I always felt good about Chambers coming to Virginia Tech from day one, simply because I think Virginia Tech is establishing a good DeMatha connection, plus, Elijah Brooks kind of is like the icing on the cake there. So I think Virginia Tech's doing a great job at that school.
Another pipeline that this coaching staff is quietly building and continuing to foster. They started on the right foot for sure with Green Run High School out of Virginia Beach, the fourth Virginia Tech recruit out of the last 2 cycles. I'm so sorry if we're about to butcher this name. There is no pronunciation guide that I could find, but Zeke Chinwike is what we're going to go with. 6'6", a tall defensive end, weighing in at 240 pounds. And the Stallions continue to provide for the Hokies.
Yeah, joining Keelan Adams, the 4-star wide receiver, and who set all those records in the state. And also in this class, you've got cornerback Knowledge Harrell, and you've got wide receiver Jaden Anderson. So that's 3 Green Run players just in this class, along with one last year. He, like you said, he's very, very tall, very rangy, runs well. He plays very, very high, which is normal for a 6'6" player at his stage. He's not the strongest at the point of attack, which kind of makes me wonder exactly how much weight room time he's seen. He's an extremely raw prospect, but he runs well, and which is important for Virginia Tech. And I think Virginia Tech, they want to get a little bit longer and a little bit lengthier at defensive end. And he obviously fits that billing. So this is a guy I wouldn't expect. He would definite red shirt, of course. Let me go ahead and throw that in there. But he's a guy who, even after the red shirt year, I would think would need another year. Mm-hmm. And then you can start talking about too deep and playing time when he's a redshirt sophomore. I think he's one of those types of prospects, which is fine because that describes most guys. Yeah, that's just the way it works out. But yeah, he's a guy who he's a guy like JC Price is. If you like coaching players up, if you like molding players, if they're starting from a low level from a technique standpoint, you can really make an impact on those guys. So this is a player who, if he stays at Virginia Tech for 5 years, JC can look back and say, well, he started at this level all the way down here, and I built him up into this. And so coaching is going to be very important for him. Coaching and also weight room time, therefore staying healthy early in his career. Avoid those shoulder injuries where it takes you out of the weight room and you're never able to add the needed strength. So for him, I think if those things happen early in his career, if he stays healthy and gets good weight room time in, I think the future bodes well.
Seems like Virginia Tech beat out West Virginia for him, and we talked on Green Run being maybe a pipeline. Maybe Tech fans aren't so familiar. Green Run hasn't lost a regular season football game in the last 3 years. This is a good school that will continue to be good as well to the Hokies.
It's crazy to me, their passing game is because Keelan Adams set all those state records, and he did it with Jaden Anderson also being a 1,000-yard receiver, and also Knowledge Harrell, who's going to play cornerback at Tech, but he also plays wide receiver for him, and he catches passes too. So it's not just so they're spreading the ball around. It's wild to me that you can set state records while also sharing the ball with multiple other targets. And I think Chinwike might play some tight end for him too. So he might catch a few also. I don't necessarily rule out the tight end position, although I haven't seen him catch the ball or anything like that. But athletically and from a size standpoint, it makes sense. But good guy to get in the program.
Well, that does it for the last 4 recruits that Virginia Tech has received, but I'm hearing a little rumblings that it might be another busy weekend here at Tech Sideline. Is that the case? And if so, who should Tech fans be keeping an eye on this weekend?
I think you go up to Northern Virginia, and Jeff Overton is set to make his announcement on Friday, and it kind of seems like Virginia Tech, South Carolina, I know Maryland's been involved in UVA, but it sounds like Virginia Tech and South Carolina. He announced when he was going to make his announcement coming off his Virginia Tech official visit, and that's generally a good sign.
Yeah.
So I would guess that he's going to commit to Virginia Tech. So, and that would be the running back in this class. It would not shock me if Virginia Tech ended up taking a transfer portal running back in December after the season is over. But Overton would be their high school guy in this class.
Well, check out techsideline.com for our extensive editorial content, and also includes in-depth articles on recruiting and other off-season storylines. As the head honcho Will Stewart put it himself, there has literally never been a better place in the existence of time for Virginia Tech athletics coverage. Thank you for tuning in, and keep your eyes peeled for more recruiting roundup videos here on our YouTube channel this summer. He's Chris Coleman. I'm Nick Brown. As always, Tech fans, enjoy your day, and as always, God bless.